Why play Ksante top lane? Well, he's another tank that can do insane damage. 3 of his 4 abilities give him a dash, his ability to peel and protect your carries is incredible, and he brings an insane amount of lockdown. However, other champions are better at 1v1s, and his ultimate if used poorly can lead to certain death. Ksante's passive makes his damaging abilities mark an enemy. He can then attack that enemy to deal bonus damage. Ksante's Q is very similar to Yasuo and Yone's. The first 2 uses deal damage and slow, and the third charges up a long range shockwave which pulls enemies towards him and deals damage. Ksante's W causes him to stand still and charge up an attack, where he becomes unstoppable and takes reduced damage. Upon release, he rams himself forwards, dealing damage and knocking back and stunning enemies hit. The damage and CC effects are increased the longer the ability was charged for. Ksante's E dashes him, granting him a shield. If used on an ally, the dash is longer and they are also shielded. Ksante's ultimate is a point and click ability which will knock back and deal damage to an enemy champion, but if they're knocked back into a wall, it will do hugely increased damage and push them all the way through the wall with you. After this, you enter your aggressive all-out form, which can be ended early by pressing R again. While in all-out form, Ksante loses 55% of his maximum health and 65% of his armor and magic resist, and he instead gets a huge amount of attack damage and omnivamp and buffs his abilities. When in all-out form, his passive will now deal true damage, his Q will have a much shorter cooldown but no longer slows, the W will no longer knock back or stun but charges up and dashes twice as fast. Also, it gives increased damage reduction as well as dealing bonus damage. And finally, the dash speed on the E is increased and it can now be used to go over walls. For combos, you want to Q into auto attack, before Wing into auto attack, before Qing into auto attack, and then wait for your final Q to come back up before auto attacking again. If you have ultimate, you want to start with ultimate, and then in a very similar fashion, you auto attack into Q, auto attack into W, auto attack into Q, and then wait for that final Q to come back up. Ksante is a great pick into CC heavy top laners who can't deal with his high mobility and his ability to ignore CC. However, he can struggle more against aggressive top laners, especially true damage users who will ignore all his stats. For Masteries, take this, you want to be a tank. For build order, start Shield and Pot into tier 2 boots and either Sunfire or a Frozen Fist. From here, these are great items into AD, these are great items into AP, and these are always great pickups. For skill order, start Q, then E, then W, before maxing Q, then E, then W, taking ult whenever you can. For summoner spells, take Flash and Teleport. Starting the game, your main focus will be on farming to become a mid-game powerhouse, and the easiest way to do this is to harass your opponent down so you can farm easily. Your Q is on a very short cooldown, and you can use this in 2 different ways. Firstly, if it's safe to do so, using Q into auto attack on the opponent blocks both your passive and your grasp, making it a great quick trade for you. Otherwise, in a similar way to what Yasuo would do, build up to your 3rd stack, and then look to fight with it available to you. When you have your ultimate, you now have great kill threat, and you now have your 3 dashes. However, don't feel forced to use it, especially if you're healthy, as losing that 55% health does mean that health will not come back even if ended early. Entering team fights, Ksante is great at peeling for your carries. Between his multiple knockups, shields and knockaways, it's almost impossible to get your AD carry without going through him, which means being the annoying frontline tank is very viable. Otherwise, he works very well as your engage. With his multiple dashes and his CC which can lock down entire teams multiple times, a Ksante engage is never a bad way to start a fight.